Coming up on today's episode of Locked On Mariners, 3 roster moves the Mariners should make before their next game and our thoughts on their 500 road trip. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Thursday, April 13th, 2023. This is Trident Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. If you listen to us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We want to see how many of you are rocking with us every Monday through Friday. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon by scanning the QR code right above my head. The link, as well as our social accounts, is also in the description of this episode. The Mariners have an off day today following a 500 road trip to Cleveland and Chicago. They'll begin an all-National League homestand tomorrow against the Rockies. I'll be joined by Locked On Rockies host Paul Holden for a special crossover for tomorrow's episode, so be sure to look out for that. We're going to get Colby's quick thoughts on that upcoming series with Colorado towards the end of the show. We're also going to tell you 3 roster moves the Mariners should make right now. But first, Colby, let's look back on the Mariners' first road trip of 2023. As I said, they went 3-3 with a series win over the Guardians and a series loss to the Cubs. It could have easily gone 6-0, and that's what makes this road trip kind of sting a little bit. What were your takeaways?
Yeah, it was kind of an up and down road trip. Obviously, you take 2 of 3 from Cleveland, with really good team, and you pitch really well for the most part, and you have the sweep right there in your hands, and you just kind of let it slip through, and you look at what happened in Chicago. Even, the first game, 2-1 in the late innings, Kelenic hits the home run. Okay. But, you just you never had the lead in that game. So just kind of easy to be like, write that one off. Well, bats didn't have their night, whatever. That type of thing happens. But then obviously, you blow a 7-run lead in the second, and just, give up like 14 unanswered runs or whatever it was. Yeah, that one was the tough one to swallow. And unfortunately, those 3 games in a row kind of overshadow the first 2 games in the last game. But at the end of the day, I think, if we're talking about road trips, 500 is a pretty good road trip. You avoid disaster, you avoid digging yourself a deeper hole, and you're right there. And the good news is that you did see some really good individual performances, even in the losses, that should, give you some confidence that this team is going to turn the corner here pretty quick. We saw some new guys come up and contribute and kind of start to fill in some holes that you had in your bullpen. We saw some really good starting pitching performances, some bounce back starting pitching performances, and of course, I think the big story of the road trip is how good Jarred Kelenic was, pretty much from the jump on the road. And also, by the way, Teo is slowly but surely creeping up to where he is. He's 98 WRC plus entering today. And when he started the road trip, I think he was like 16. So you're starting to see guys kind of flip this thing around. Julio had a really nice series in Cleveland. Went the other way in Chicago. Same for Cal. But, it's there's a lot of really good things in this road trip. And you were just 1 or 2 plays away from this being a great road trip instead of just kind of kind of mid road trip. But overall, there were a lot of positives to take away from their first 6 games on the road.
Kelenic in the 6 games slashes 455, 520, 1,000. That's a 318 WRC plus with the 3 home runs, 5 ribs, stolen base, 10 hits, and 25 plate appearances for Kelenic.
It's decent.
And he also walked 12% of the time. Yeah, that's pretty decent. Is he the MVP of the road trip for the Mariners, or is there a counter argument to be made for Ty France?
No.
Yeah,
Nope.
France was also really good though.
He was,
to be
but
clear.
Jarred's that much better.
Yeah, Jarred was just that ridiculous.
If the week ended today, Kelenic would be the American League Player of the Week.
Yeah.
So, no, it's France. Again, Ty had a really nice road trip as well. He's off to a really good start, but no, there is no argument to be made. It is Jarred Kelenic's show right now.
Yep.
And he is kind of single-handedly lifting the spirits of Mariner fans or let me rephrase that, single-handedly lifting the spirits of dumb Mariner fans who think the season's already over because they're 3 games under 500 on April 13th.
France,
you know who you are.
Yeah. France /357, 419, 429. That's a 149 WRC plus on the road trip. 4 ribs, couple doubles, 10 hits, and 31 plate appearances. Just struck out 12.9% of the time, walked in 9.7% of the time. Really good road trip for Ty France. And like you mentioned, Teoscar Hernandez starting to turn things around. Had a couple of splash at bats, the big home run yesterday, of course. But really the important thing here is that he's hitting the ball hard with frequency. He's had at least a couple hard hit balls, and I think 4 of the 6 games on the road trip. Might be wrong on that, but he had a really nice road trip overall. The results will eventually come, because most of those games were, even when he got a hit, he was like 1 for 5. I think like Sunday,
Right.
there was a 1 for 5. He had the RBI and extra innings, but overall, some things turning around there. You can see it pretty clearly in the bat with Teo. And then, finally, it was good to see Logan Gilbert bounce back after a rough outing in Cleveland, where he was only able to complete 4 innings, and the velocity wasn't there. The velocity pretty much did stick yesterday in Chicago. There were a couple of dips here and there. I think he did. I think his lowest fastball was around 91 miles per hour, Statcast said, but he was 95, 94 consistently. So that was really good to see. And we actually saw some good stuff out of his secondaries as well. So overall, good road trip. You go 500, you got to feel pretty good about that, especially when, one of the teams on that road trip is a really good team like Cleveland. They're top, 4-ish team in the American League. So being able to take 2 or 3 from them after losing 3 or 4 to them in Seattle, really good stuff. And like Colby said, like I've been talking about here, there's some silver linings overall, despite how devastating those 3 losses were.
Yeah, and it's not just Gilbert who had the bounce back start. George Kirby had a pretty nice bounce back
Yep.
after his first start. So did Marco Gonzalez. So,
Yep.
and then Flexen decided to go the opposite direction, but that's okay. That's going to happen. And Castillo remained, as good as we know he is. So, yeah, there were a lot of positives. I think one of the other positives is that we are starting to see the Mariners, at least right now. It appears they've kind of found a solution to their middle innings bullpen problems with the emergence of Gabe Spires and also Justin Topa, who have both been very, very good since they've been called up.
Yep.
And, we continue to see some pretty good stuff from Trevor Gott. I feel pretty good about where the Mariners stack up in the middle innings, 5, 6, 7. So we'll just have to wait and see how they stack up in the late innings. Seawald's been okay. Brash has been up and down to be nice about it.
Yeah.
But he's working through some 35 grade command right now, or control right now, and probably 25 grade command. So, it's something he's got to figure out, because without Andres Munoz there to pick up the slack for at least another, 10 days or so, they need these guys to step up. And if they can get to a point where they can, on a semi-nightly basis, it's got Topa, Spires, Seawald, Brash, Munoz, you feel pretty good about that based on what we've seen so far and what we know about these players. So bullpen's starting to round into shape, and thankfully, again, they have the off day today. Gilbert was able to go deep in yesterday's game, and now the bullpen should be reset to a spot where everybody should be, well rested and ready to go.
I see you're giving Gabe Spire the Luis Robert treatment, where you're adding an S to the end of his last name.
Yeah.
You always say Luis
I'm still trying to learn
Roberts.
how to spell it.
It's Speier.
I-E-R. Yeah, whatever.
Spire.
I still get
Spell
Ahmad Rosario.
Sepchinsky.
Oh, good Lord. I'm going to pass on that. I know it starts with an R.
RZEP CZYNSKI, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
There we go.
But yeah, I still get Ahmad Rosario and the other guy mixed up all the time in Cleveland. So,
Oh, Andres Jimenez.
yes, I
Yeah.
still get those guys mixed up in my head. So, tis what it is.
All right. Well, that has been spelling with Locked On Mariners. Now we are going to be talking about 3 moves the Mariners should make before their next game in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Before we get into our 3 moves the Mariners should make before their next game, Colby, it's about time to remind our lovely listener here what we're doing with Feeding America. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Ty and I have partnered with Feeding America to raise money and therefore meals for those who are facing food insecurity in this country. That's 34 million, about 10% of the population doesn't know where their next meal is coming from. That includes 9 million children. We can make a difference. Scan the QR code on the screen right now or click the link in the bio in the description. If you're listening and not watching, the link will also be in the description of the episode. Just click that link. It'll take you to our fundraising page. We set out about 3 weeks ago with the goal of $500. Yesterday, we passed $5,000. And it's just been an incredible thing to track. So Feeding America is a great organization. They can turn every dollar raised into 10 nutritious meals for those facing food insecurities, which means on your guys' donations alone, we've raised about 52,500 meals so far, which is just incredible. So if you want to help out and donate, you can, like I said, you can scan the QR code or you can click on the link in the description either the video or the audio only version of this show. If you can't donate right now, that's totally fine. We get it. Ty and I are donating 10 cents for every new subscriber we get from the start of this until May 1st. So we've actually kicked up in that number too. I think we're approaching 400, maybe 500 new subs. So that is 500 meals that'll be tacked on at the end of our fundraiser. So just from clicking a button, it really is that simple. If you guys still want to help out and you've kind of maxed out your donations and all that stuff, feel free to share this with coworkers, put it on Facebook, Twitter, whatever you have to do. Just, you can help us spread the word of this and see how high we can push this thing. We got about 17 days left, a little more than 2 weeks to see how far we can go. And if we do get to 10,000, this guy over here is going to get a tattoo.
That's
So
right.
rumor has it might be a full body Jarred Kelenic.
Yeah,
We'll
it's
have to
gonna
wait.
be the jersey that I wore
Yeah, there you
yesterday.
go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so again, thank you guys so much for participating in that. We're about halfway through our our timeline here, and we're halfway to 10K. So we're on good pace, but we need to keep it going. So again, thank you guys so much for donating. Thank you so much for spreading the word and subscribing and all that stuff. It's been a really cool, fun thing to track, and we'll have to do more stuff like this in the future. But for now, again, just thank you guys and let's keep it going. Let's see how far we can push this thing.
Let's go. Let's give some shout outs here to some of the recent donos. Ernesto came through with $100, Anonymous with 5, Anonymous with 50, Glenn with 10, Anonymous with 10, Colin with 30, Frank with 10, Anonymous with $1.34 to get us to 5K because we were at 4,999. And you went on Twitter, Colby, and asked someone to just please donate $1 so we don't have to look at this. $20 from Anonymous, $50 from Anonymous, $10 from Anonymous, $10 from Doug, $20 from Anonymous, $5 from Anonymous, and 15 from Bradley, and 100 from Andrew. That dates back to April 10th. Thank you guys, every single one of you, for all of your donations. And again, just subscribe to the YouTube channel or have someone subscribe to the YouTube channel, and that's just as good as a donation. That is one meal going to someone that could really use it. All right, so Colby, we need to talk a little bit about this roster because the Mariners haven't made many changes to the roster except for when they've absolutely needed to. The Robbie Ray injury, and then the bullpen's been a little bit taxed, so there's been moves on that front. But let's talk about just moving on from some guys right now that are not really contributing at the moment. Who do you want to start with?
I think we'd probably start right off with the obvious one. Tommy La Stella shouldn't be on this roster. We talked about this back in March when he got hurt, that the field staff doesn't really think La Stella looked all that good before he got hurt. They're not sure how long lasting the injury is going to be. Now, he was able to swing the bat sooner than they thought, but he still has not thrown, he still has not fielded a single ball. Like, as far as we know, he's not going to be able to throw anytime soon, and he's simply not carrying it enough at the plate. And you could see the Mariners really don't think so either, because he's barely played. So either he suffered some kind of setback that they're trying to protect against, or they just look at this and they go, he doesn't give us a better chance to win, which is probably the most likely thing. And if La Stella can't play defense and he has to hit to contribute, he's not doing that right now. You need to move on. You need to get somebody who can at least go play a defensive position and help you there. So for me, La Stella is the easy one. Maybe they like him in the clubhouse, whatever. Doesn't matter. You can't be a bat only guy who can't hit and be on a good roster. Just, it's not going to work. So if La Stella isn't ready to play in the field tomorrow, then he shouldn't be on this roster. It's really that simple.
Agreed, because you can at least get more value out of someone like a Mason McCoy or even Colin Moran, who's been playing third base down in Tacoma, and someone that's, I mean, again, Tommy La Stella is giving you basically nothing offensively. I think he has 2 hits through the first how many games he's played. I think he's played like 6 games, something like that so far. That's, you're not really downgrading much, even if you don't think that you're going to get a lot out of Colin Moran, because especially at the end of the day, you're just trying to get to whenever Dylan Moore or Taylor Trammell can come back. And obviously Moore suffered a minor setback, apparently, according to Ryan Divish, where he didn't feel good enough to play in AAA games just yet. He's meeting up with the team today in Seattle, and he's going to be working out there for a couple of days before he goes out on a rehab assignment. Surprise, surprise. That the guy that basically didn't participate in any baseball activity this offseason and missed the entirety of spring training isn't ready to go 2 weeks into the month of April. Yeah, we told you this was going to happen. We told you that, like, this is why, and obviously, hindsight is 2020 now, but this is why we were like, yeah, you should maybe trade Chris Flexen for something, for your bench, because you're probably going to need it.
Or go trade for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. Go sign Jose Iglesias or whoever was out there. Like, you need to go get somebody who can play shortstop if you're not going to have Mason McCoy be on this team. And the Mariners said, no, we know better. And they were wrong. Flat out, they were wrong. Surprise, the guy who didn't participate at all spring and all winter, not ready to go when you absolutely need him to. Shocker. I know, but yeah. So hopefully Dylan Moore gets back soon, because you kind of need him right now. He's good against lefties. And I mean, you've seen JP Crawford hit. So, it'd be nice to have Crawford on the bench against a tough lefty here.
So Reddit, what we're saying here is, we told you so.
Mm-hmm.
But
like we always do.
In all seriousness,
100% success rate.
Yeah. In all seriousness, though, seriously, if you have a guy that's coming off of multiple Achilles injuries, has a bum elbow, can't play in the field, and his swing looks god awful. Like, it's terrible. Some of the swings that he had in Chicago, atrocious. Just he's giving you nothing right now. He's just, look, and I'm not trying to drag the guy, because he's gone through a lot physically, and this was someone that was, before all the injuries, an all-star player in 2019 for the Angels. But at a certain point, enough is enough. Like, he's showing you who he is right now, and he's not a competitive major league bat. So
no.
I think it's just time to move on and see what you can get out of someone like Colin Moran, he's probably a better bet to succeed at the major league level than Tommy La Stella at this point. So I would go with him personally, at least to serve as a bridge to get you to Moore or Trammell or whoever, is the next guy.
Yeah.
Cooper Hummel is the other guy that we need to talk about here, Colby. He, I feel for the guy because he's a local kid who's, joined the team, and I know he wants to contribute and all that stuff, but he's made a base running error. He doesn't look very competitive at the plate. He doesn't really give you anything defensively either. I just don't really see, it's still very early, but just pairing this with what we've seen from Hummel in his cup of coffee at the major league level in Arizona, I just don't see a major league caliber player right now, even as a bench guy. Obviously, there aren't many better options down in Tacoma for you, but there might be some, right?
If you're not going to they clearly don't want Cooper Hummel to catch. They've had opportunities to, pinch hit Tom Murphy with Cal Raleigh as the DH. They could still hit for Murphy to get a better matchup and then put Hummel behind the dish, and they've declined to do that twice now. So clearly they don't think catching is a part of his profile as anything more than an emergency guy. He's, I think, played just a handful of innings in the outfield. He's kind of he's capable of playing, defense, but the Mariners kind of aren't letting him, which tells a lot about where he is. So kind of like La Stella, he has to hit, right? If he's going to justify his roster spot, and he's not. He looks better than La Stella, but that's not saying anything. And so if you're just going to use Hummel as a DH, 3 times a week, you're probably going to get more competitive at bats from somebody like Mike Ford. And if you really do value that third catcher or whatever, you could just go get Brian O'Keefe. If you really want that catcher element.
Friend of the show, Brian O'Keefe.
Yes. If you want that catcher element, fine, you can go do that. But I don't think they do, because obviously they haven't used Hummel as a catcher yet. So I don't think that matters to them. But I think Moran and Mike Ford is probably better bets right now than La Stella and Hummel. Hummel, you can send right back to AAA. He's got options left. You can continue to work on it there. And Ford and Moran are also stopgaps, like you said, until Trammell, Marlowe, Moore, until those guys are possibly ready to go. So
I also feel like Mike Ford is one of those dudes who's going to have a really good stretch at some point in his career and just never again.
Ford will have a 6-week stretch where he hits 270 with 9 home runs.
Yeah.
And then the rest of
I feel
career,
like Mike Ford could be Darren Ruff at some point,
Yeah. By the way, Darren Ruff would have made a little bit of sense for this team. But, so yeah, I think those two are pretty obvious. I'm certainly much more willing to wait on Hummel a little bit more than I am with Stella.
Right.
But I think both of those guys are 2 moves that you probably need to make. And, like I said, it could be Ford, it could be Moran, it could be Cesar Hernandez, it could be
who played
Mason
center
McCoy.
field yesterday in Tacoma for some reason.
I don't think is an accident. So I think Cesar's probably going to get some run here at some point. Mason McCoy had a really nice spring, and he can at least play a really good shortstop. And he's a guy who can get JP off his feet, or possibly Wong if Mason McCoy plays second. So I just think there's better options, because while I don't have a lot of faith that in particular O'Keefe, Ford, and McCoy are massive upgrades offensively over the course of 600 plate appearances. They're probably upgrades right now in the short term, and at least they give some defensive versatility.
Is it time to move on from Diego Castillo? We're going to answer that question in just a moment, but real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about, and chances are you're one of them. Rocket Money will quickly and easily find your subscriptions for you, and for any you don't want to pay for anymore, just hit cancel, and Rocket Money will cancel it for you. It's that easy. Rocket Money also helps you manage all your finances in one place and automatically categorize your expenses so you can easily track your budget in real time and also get alerted if anything looks off. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person up to $720 $100 a year. So stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. This episode of Locked On Mariners is also brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and calories? Then you need the best tasting protein bar ever. Built. You got to try this. If you're like me and you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise taste, I've got just the thing for you. Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and taste amazing. Seriously, they taste so amazing, you won't think they're good for you. You got to try this. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they are all covered in 100% real dark chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they are healthy, only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get yourself a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club, while you can still get your specialty flavors at Built.com. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puff. And if you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab yourself a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. So, Diego Castillo hasn't been great so far to start the season, to put it lightly. Colby, the Mariners acquired him at the trade deadline after dealing Kendall Graveman to the Astros, and that well-documented deal that brought Abraham Toro and Joe Smith over to Seattle. And they've had high expectations for him, but this is a guy that used to throw incredibly hard in Tampa and was one of the more sneaky, underrated relievers in all of baseball during his time in Tampa. But we haven't really gotten that version of Diego Castillo in Seattle. And once again, he's been a bit lackluster coming out of the pen to start this year out. So, as I asked earlier, is it time to move on from Diego, from the Dominican big boss, as sad as it would be?
Yeah, it's a little tough. It's a little tougher with Diego because we've seen some glimpses of a viable middle reliever, but right now he's running a 17.5 walk percent. That is, I mean, just absurdly too high. His K percentage is also going down significantly. In 2021, it was 32.2. Last year was 23.9. This year it's 17.4. So that's a trend that's not going in the right direction. Walks have also gone up each of the last 3 years. ERA has gone up each of the last 3 years, and obviously the caveat in 2023 is that it's not a full year, but blah blah blah. xERA is going up. The one thing that Castillo did really well last year, though, is that he avoided hard contact. As hard as that may be to believe, last year Diego Castillo, when you look at his hard hit percentage, 95th percentile, which is really good, obviously. 90th percentile in average exit velo, 88th percentile in exit batting average, 86th in X slug. The problem is that the walks were too high. And that looks like that's a problem right now. So you're kind of in a tough spot with Diego because you've also kind of tapped out the upper level bullpen options that you have. Now there's like Prelander Barreau you can go get, but I don't think you're ready to make that move quite yet. You go get Saucedo, maybe is a guy you can go get. But
What about
is how
Riley
big-
O'Brien?
Yeah, maybe. Like O'Brien's probably the guy. He had a rough first outing, but yesterday he was pretty good. So that's probably the guy if you do make a move there. But I think if they did go get O'Brien right now, they would probably just DFA McCacken. So
Right.
or does McCacken have options? I don't know, but either way, that would probably be the move. So I don't know if it's feasible to
They would still have to add O'Brien to the 40 man.
40 man,
so
yeah.
yeah.
So I think you would I think the soonest we could see Castillo get DFA'd would probably be when they feel really good about Munoz and his health.
Sure.
because again, they already have kind of one spot in the bullpen they need to fill with somebody better than McCacken. And there's enough in Castillo that I think you look at and you say, we can give him a couple more outings. But if they did go ahead and decide to just, pull the plug now, I certainly wouldn't blame them. He's getting nothing
Sure.
from his sinker. That pitch is worthless, and the four seamer is not much better right now. So he's all slider, and we know that Diego has a tendency to get around that pitch and just kind of throw a cement mix spinner right in the middle of the plate at
Yeah.
times. So if he's not super sharp with that location, that ball's a batting practice fastball. So it's a very small margin of error that Diego Castillo has right now. And if he's going to walk guys and he's not going to get more out of the sinker and the fastball, then he's not a major league quality reliever. So I think we're at the point where you should consider it. You should consider making a move. I just don't know if we're at the point yet where it's feasible for the Mariners to move on from Diego.
Yeah, it's just I would like to avoid getting him into high leverage situations as much as I possibly can here, because it's right now he's just not capable of getting key outs. He's not capable of working under pressure. And right now I'd put Gott ahead of him. I'd put Spire ahead of him. I'd put Topa ahead of him. I'd put Seawald and Brash ahead of him, even with Brash's control issues right now. Like, I'm putting all those guys ahead of him. He's pretty far down the list in terms of who I want to see with the game on the line right now. And that's a problem though, because you acquired him to be that guy. You acquired him to be one of those high leverage dudes for you. And it just hasn't panned out like that. So that's a little disappointing. But I still think that he can be effective out of the pen as well, if you give him some time here to work through some things. But eventually you're going to run out of time. So this, of the three moves that we talked about today, not as pressing. I don't, even though this is the three roster moves the Mariners need to make before the next game, I don't think they really necessarily need to move on from Diego Castillo right now as things currently stand. But I also, like you, would not be surprised at all and wouldn't really blame the Mariners if we saw tomorrow Diego Castillo has been DFA'd for Riley O'Brien or whoever.
Right. Yeah, you need bullpen arms who can give you competitive innings. And right now, Castillo is too inconsistent to know if you're going to get competitive innings. I guess there's some promise in the changeup, so maybe that's kind of the secret here. But whether it's the four seamer or the sinker, he has to get more value on one of his fastballs. Otherwise, if he doesn't get value on those fastballs, he's at best a middle reliever. And obviously, if he doesn't have the control of his slider and he's not spinning it well, then he's not major league quality.
So Mariners face the Rockies tomorrow. You're going to be at the game tomorrow. 3-game series overall between these two teams over the weekend. The Mariners got Marco Gonzalez going tomorrow. Condolences, Colby, for having to watch Marco of all the Mariners pitching probables there could be. And George Kirby on Saturday. Luis Castillo on Sunday. We don't know who's going for the Rockies on Sunday because of German Marquez going on the IL. It seems like it's going to be a prospect named Noah Davis. Don't know a ton about him, but Paul Holden of Locked On Rockies talked a little bit about him on the crossover episode that we did. That's going to be coming out tomorrow, so look out for that. But Colby, since you did not record with us on there, let's get your quick thoughts on this series with the Rockies before we head on out for the weekend.
Not only am I going to have to watch Marco Gonzalez, I'm also probably not going to get to watch Jarred Kelenic, because for whatever reason, Scott will not play him against lefties. And as we all know, Austin Gomer is like, he's basically Kershaw from like 10 years ago. So God forbid we give Kelenic a chance to hit lefties, because all he did in the minors is hit like 300 with like a 400 on base and a 600 slug against them. But Lord forbid we give him a chance to hit against Austin Gomer. Not great timing there, especially, but maybe Scott will give him a shot against this particular lefty. But I think overall, again, as has been the case really the entire season, the pitching probables in the series certainly favor you.
Yeah.
Hasn't really made a difference so far, but maybe this is a series that finally does. I think you don't need to do anything in April, but I think this is a series where it feels like you kind of need to win this series, take 2 of 3 from a Rockies team that's not awful, but this is not a good pitching staff. Let's just call it what it is.
I'm going to hold the Mariners to an even higher standard. Sweep, please. Thank you. Just sweep. Just let's do that.
It's so hard to sweep any team, but the Rockies will be interesting. CJ Cron's off to a hot start. I know that. And then I don't even know, like, I know they overplayed Riley McMahon, but is he producing right now? I don't know. Brendan Rodgers is a nice player. I don't know if Chris Bryant's even healthy. Like, I don't know a lot about the Rockies, to be perfectly honest with you. I just know that they're not very good. So you kind of want to take 2 or 3 here, especially when you're going to have Kirby and Castillo pitching in this series. You really want to win those 2 games, and Marco should, be able to give you a shot. But the thing with Marco is that you never know what you're going to get. So do we get start 1 Marco, or do we get start 2 Marco, or do we get somewhere in between? So, I think this sets up well for the Mariners to win a series. Get the first series win of the season, get, within shouting distance of 500 again. And hey, you know what? If you can win the first 2, might as well try and win the third. Like, why not? You came to the ballpark. You might as well try and win that game.
You should do that. Yeah.
So I would like to see Kelenic get some at-bats against Gomer. I would like to see, Marco just give the team the chance to win tomorrow. Like, that's all I ever hope for Marco. And then I'd like to see Kirby and Castillo, 6, 7 innings, 1 or 2 runs, something like that, and just have a good time against this lineup. But the Rockies can hit a little bit, so you have to be careful. This isn't, the Oakland A's. It's there's some legit hitters in this lineup, and you have to be a little bit careful, and a lot of right-handed hitters in particular. So we'll see how Marco handles that.
As for Kelenic, you need to start him against the lefty here. A little bit of a heat check, if you will, for Jarred. Just see where he's at. See if he can actually be a viable option against lefties, because he has been down in the minors. We went over this on our Patreon show. You surprised me with some of the numbers, because I kind of underestimated Kelenic's numbers against lefties as well down in the minors, but they're actually really good. So he hasn't really shown you anything except for, the 558 plate appearances at the major league level that suggests that he's bad against lefties, but also he was just bad against everyone. So that doesn't really suggest that he's just unhittable against lefties. He was really unhittable against righties as well. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter. So I don't really feel like that tells you much either. So see if this new version of Jarred Kelenic can actually get after it a little bit against lefties, because maybe you do have an everyday player there. You don't have a guy that you're just strictly platooning.
Right, and that kind of opens the door a little bit for Pollock to DH a little bit more. But like, I think Gomer is a good tester here for Kelenic. It's not like you're asking him to go up against Carlos Rodon or Chris Sale, or these guys who are just death on lefties.
I mean, maybe you want to go up against Chris Sale right now.
Well, I mean, right now. What I mean? You're not asking him to go up against one of the best lefties with a wipeout slider. You're asking him to go up against Austin Gomer, who's Marco Gonzalez Colorado version. See if he can do something.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us, and that's going to do it for our show today. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, DANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok as well at Locked On Mariners. That's one word, Locked On Mariners. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen. Now, for your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts, just like us, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day. And me and Paul Holden of Locked On Rockies will see you tomorrow. Peace.